Thanks again. I did. Okay. Good morning. Sorry for the slow start, but we'll try to pick it up. The one advantage of being from New York is I speak quickly. And the advantage for you is you listen quickly. So between us, we'll cover a lot of ground. All right? So good morning again. It's great to be here. It's like definitely coming home. I have no financial relationships to disclose, although I wish I had some, but I don't. All right. So the good news, young people are healthier now than they've ever been. The bad news is sexual health is still an issue. Every day, young people play what I like to call sexual roulette. There's an opportunity to acquire a number of adverse outcomes. In the United States, almost half of all STDs occur in young people 15 to 24. Half of all STDs. 25% of all new HIV infections occur in young people under the age of 19. 50% of all HIV infections occur in young people 24 or younger. Now, the map of chlamydial infections in the country, and you can see Mississippi has the highest prevalence. And if you look more regionally, you'll see wide variability. When you look at this map, what does it tell you? Two things right away. One, there's marked variability by region. And the second thing, if you're going to have anonymous or random sex, have it in Vermont. So, unfortunately, the STD epidemic is worsening. These data from CDC are about 2 months old. And STDs are increasing. Gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis are increasing. The problem becomes we don't have a lot of antibiotics in the pipeline. So the era of inexpensive, uncomplicated treatment may be quickly disappearing as resistance grows. Now, teens and sex, nothing new. This has been going on for ever and ever. But trying to change sexual behavior is like Sisyphus pushing a boulder up a hill. It's really, really hard to do. Changing any behavior is hard, but changing sexual behavior is particularly challenging. Now, the CDC, to their benefit, has created this compendium. It's a research synthesis of effective evidence-based interventions. I don't think it exists on the web anymore, if I'm not mistaken. No? John? It does?
I was there yesterday.
Okay, it does. Perfect. So it does exist. At one point it was taken off the web. Now it's back on the web. So you can see all the interventions that CDC independently reviews and rates. Now, one of the things that you notice is that behavioral interventions are effective. We can get behavior change. The problem is that change or effect decreases over time, and it decreases rather rapidly. So the internet came on the scene when we were engaged in research with young people. And as you'll see, in 60 seconds, there are 168 million emails sent. Now, that's actually a few years old, so I'm assuming a lot more. My daughter sends that many in about 60 seconds. So I'm sure there's more than that. Yeah? So young people don't just use one media device, they use many media devices, right? So multitasking generation. And the question always comes down to, are kids too wired for their own good? Yeah. Now, who's heard of a sexting? You have? Oh, perfect. You people do look vaguely familiar. But yes, but sexting. This is interesting. 28% of young people sent a naked picture of themselves 28% sent a naked picture of themselves. Once it's on the web forever. Yeah, you can't scrub it. So that picture exists, unfortunately. Now, the internet has been described as the de facto sex educator in the United States. That's where young people learn about sex. And to that issue, the National Research Council commissioned a report that was chaired by Dick Thornburgh. Dick Thornburgh was the Attorney General under Ronald Reagan, to explore young people and the internet. Now, I always like to pop a quiz because I'm a faculty person. So as a professor, we give pop quizzes. You ready? How many people visit an adult website on any given day in the United States? Excluding our friends. How many people say 100,000? More? 1 million? More than that? 10 million? 10? 10. I have 10 going once. Whoever gets the right answer, by the way, Bob and Claude have a little surprise for you. 20 million. 20? More? None of the above. None of the above. 60 million people, 1 in 5 people in the US is on an X-rated website every day. Yeah, we actually have a grant to look at this, believe it or not. We have a random sample, a national sample of 600 youth we've been following for 2 years, monitoring all their web usage. Now we'll get to kids. What proportion of adolescents wind up at an adult website each year? How many people say 20%? It's 1 in 5. Each year. 30%, almost 1 out of 3? 60%? 70% of young people are on an X-rated website every year. So the internet is the de facto sex educator in the United States.
So Ralph, some of us in this room have young adult children and we're now all...
I'm sorry. Does someone have a Starbucks double latte for Claude? A macchiato for me, by the way.
With whiskey.
With whiskey for Claude. Okay, so the internet is a powerful influence. And why is it a powerful influence? Because it's media driven. 65% of all people are visual learners. They're not auditory learners. So you need visual imagery. Now, when you think about the problem of adolescent sexuality, once we decide on the theory of the problem, then that drives the theory of the solution. But we have to think differently. It's not simply giving people information. Young people have information. The key, as we like to think of it, is motivation. How do you get people to take the information they have, acquire the skills that we think are necessary for prevention, but then the most important part, use that information and use those skills. You can have them, but if you don't use them, it doesn't confer any protection. So we came up with the new media. My lovely wife and I, sister was an intervention we developed way back when, but we decided, face-to-face interventions are very good and they're effective. It's just that they're very hard to scale and disseminate. They're labor intensive, which doesn't make them cost effective. So the lure of technology came on the scene. By the way, this is our daughter, Sahara. So we named this intervention after her. Luckily, we only have 2 kids, or we'd have to have more interventions, right? So this is Sahara. And this is the intervention itself. It was brief. 2 hours on a computer. Just 2 hours. Individual on a computer. Here are the young ladies. And here, if you can try this and see if this plays. Let's see if that plays. It does. Can you make it louder? So Nakia Braxton was with us for over 20 years. She's a health educator par excellence. Next, oh, I'm driving the boat on this one. Double click it, please.
I'm just saying. I'm not too sure why you're doing all this talk about being calm. I don't like the way calm feels. No, there. It's fine. We haven't used them before. So why do you want to calm down? Look, I know we haven't always been kind in the past, but I want to start now. I don't really have to worry about me getting paid every time. I just want to enjoy doing it.
All right. I see this means a lot. You know, it means a lot to me. I guess we're trying to. We start right now.
By the way, that was actually shot at our house. We had to leave for a week, take the kids, go to a hotel while they brought in the film crew, the director, the script people, the makeup artist, et cetera, et cetera. And the people you just saw had just met. They're both undergraduates at Clark University in Atlanta. And of course, we did a quick 3-month follow-up and we got some nice effects. Horizons was another intervention that was in the archives of pediatrics. Nice changes, reductions in STDs, and particular reductions in recurrent chlamydial infection. Now, one of the interesting things about doing face-to-face interventions, which I think we all did, yeah, we all started at that place, was that how do you go from face-to-face interventions to a digital or media platform? It's not a straight line translation, unfortunately. So can you click on that, please?
My body's on, right?
I said I like you. I'm not ready for sex though.
What are you waiting for?
We're not waiting on anything. I said I'm not ready.
Why not?
I don't have to give you a reason. I just said I wasn't ready. But when I am, I'll let you know so we can go get tested.
What do you mean get tested? I don't need to get tested. I'm good. I know I don't have any diseases.
Good nothing. You better go get tested before you even think about getting any of it.
My wife is very instrumental here. Yeah. So one of the key issues is people, again, have knowledge and they have skills, but we wanted to focus on communication styles. So we go over 3 styles: passive, aggressive, which don't actually get you what you want, and assertive, which she is demonstrating. So we actually demonstrate these, and then hopefully people can emulate what they're seeing in videos. Let me skip that one for a second. Oh, by the way, who are these people? Does anyone know? That's good. That's good. Who are these people? That's right. You're going to have to see Claude and Robert later for the gift certificate. Yeah? Now, why am I showing you this? I just showed you that some of the video interventions are effective. So people will always ask me, yeah, particularly my students, they'll come up and say, hey, we're in the media capital of the world, New York. Why don't we let Madison Avenue do our interventions? Great idea? Yeah? They get us to buy toilet tissue all the time. Yeah? Why don't we get Madison Avenue? So here's what I did. I went and I looked at the data for milk consumption. Anyone seen the Got Milk commercial with Beyonce and Heinz Ward? I looked at the data for milk. Here's the media buy, here's how much media spends, that purple line, and here's the awareness, incredible awareness about milk. But guess what? The consumption is flat. Over 6 years, consumption hasn't changed. So that's the big difference between us and Madison Avenue. I'm not concerned with people being aware of something or how much money we spend to make people aware. I'm concerned with getting behavior change. And that's the big difference between us. So, media is not a panacea. It is not a broadsword. It's to be used like a scalpel. We don't just put media out there and people change their behavior. That would be the case. That'd be very easy, and we can all take a break and go to Starbucks. No. But mobile technology was coming on the scene. Interestingly, 75% of the Earth's people are connected by mobile technology. Surprisingly, this is surprisingly, I have T-Mobile. Does anyone have T-Mobile? Well then, if you come visit, you're in big trouble. Yeah? I cannot use T-Mobile in Greenwich, Connecticut, but I can make a call from Kampala. Isn't that the weirdest thing? Right? T-Mobile. And they say, well, we have something with our towers. It's Greenwich, Connecticut. It's not like it's in a foreign land, right? So the digital divide was extensive at one point, no longer, markedly narrowed. And so what I really want to talk about is AFIYA, how we use some of this technology. So with AFIYA is a complementary and integrated model. Yeah? And it's a dynamic model or an adaptive model of an intervention. So how do you optimize? What is optimization? The first question. Optimization is a term borrowed from software engineering. And it's the process of making something work more efficiently or fewer resources. Behavioral optimization is the same thing. Can we modify an intervention system, behavioral or biomedical and behavioral, to enhance its efficiency and effectiveness? How do you facilitate optimization? Well, I can think of at least two strategies, and there's probably more. One is MOST. This is a procedure developed by Linda Collins, and you may want to pick up her book. And the other one is something that Gina and I did called ADAPTED. And in particular, theater testing. So MOST provides a relative numerical assessment of the different components of an intervention by putting them in a factorial model. Essentially, you're panning for gold. You want to see which components have the most impact on your outcomes. Adapted is a qualitative approach, which gives you input on the value of the different components, but also on where those components go in the intervention and the sequencing of those components. It's like baking a cake. Interventions are like baking a cake. Part of it is you follow the directions, the science, and part of it is art. So it's science and artistry together. Now we're going to talk about dynamic interventions or adaptive interventions. They're adaptive or dynamic because they're not constant or static. Remember I showed you the picture of the box, CDC box interventions? In those days, correct me if I'm wrong, everyone was making manualized interventions, right? And you had to follow the manual. If you deviated, you had to adapt it and explain why. But you had a manual, you followed it. You had pieces of the intervention in the box, you used them. That's not an adaptive intervention. That's strictly a manualized, rote intervention. Unfortunately, those interventions needed to be adapted. And even when you adapt them, unfortunately, they're not appropriate for everyone. People change. People have different circumstances. So, adaptive interventions. Decision points about when treatment is started, type of treatment, tailoring to meet the individual's needs, different types of options for the intervention. If I walk into my doctor tomorrow and my cholesterol is 200, and they say, oh, Ralph, your cholesterol is high, I'm going to put you on a statin. And they give me 10 milligrams of Lipitor. Okay? It's an intervention. I come back a month later, my cholesterol is still high. What do? Right? They either up the dose or change the statin. So they're adapting their intervention to my response to the intervention. And that's what we want to do. So AFIYA was designed for young people, 14 to 20. It's a supplemental treatment trial, which I'll show you exactly what that is. The primary outcomes are incident chlamydial infection. So here's the design. Baseline, people are randomized. Everyone gets the same CDC evidence-based intervention. It's our intervention called Horizons. So both groups get the same intervention. Then they get assigned to either a phone mobile counseling intervention or a same dose mobile counseling, but on a different focus, on nutrition, right? So everything is matched. So there's, And then we do assessments at 6 all the way through the 36-month follow-up. This is the longest follow-up with a biological marker of any intervention for kids. 3-year follow-up on the average age of 18. So we use DNA assays from swabs to screen for chlamydia, gonorrhea as an objective biomarker. We do ACASI, of course, and we detect adolescents who are positive for an STD. We use single-dose therapy and treat them right then and there on the spot. So we know that they're treated. The PCR is the polymerase chain reaction assay for the STDs. And self-report, of course, a big focus is on condom use partners and substance use. Can you click on this, please? And this is Tiffany Renfro, who's a health educator who's worked with us for over 20 years.
Were there any times that, or can you think of how many times you were able to use condoms?
5 times, I'll say using about 3.
3 times were able to use them 3 times, so then there were only a couple of times that you were able to use them. So can you tell me what happened for the reasons you all did?
One of
Zoom
the
tight.
times, we weren't prepared. Things just kind of happened. We weren't really planning it as that. And then the other time, he just didn't really want to use them. He doesn't really like them.
Okay. And do you know why Brian doesn't like to use the condom?
Well, he says he doesn't really like the way they feel, and he also says because we're not seeing other people, we're just seeing each other, that we should really use him.
The good thing is that, you know, there were times that you guys were able to stick with the plan, and it sounds like this is an important.
Can you stop right there? So the interesting part there is you see she reframes it, right? You use condom 3 times out of the last 5. So rather than focusing on the 2 times they did not use condoms, what does she do? Right. She goes right to the positive. Well, you were able to use condoms 3 times. That's right. That's great. So she's reframing, and positive reinforcement much better than negative reinforcement. Why hammer at the 2 times when you can reward the 3 times that condoms were used? So this is what makes the intervention adaptive. Now, if that person said 0, it would be a different response, right? That's what makes it adaptive. If it was scripted, the response wouldn't be variable, right? And of course, you have to do a quick appraisal on the phone. These are 10 to 15-minute phone contacts once every 2 months. That's not a lot of time, but once every 2 months. So quickly, you have to determine what a person is doing behaviorally and then try to identify what barrier is the primary barrier and then address it. Of course, you know, we have the usual, the ethnic and gender pride, which is a staple in the interventions we do. We think that is an important key to catalyze motivation, enhancing people's ethnic and gender pride. In our first intervention, Sister, we had a tagline, be safe for your child, your community, and yourself. So we played to a woman's altruism, their children, their community, and then themselves. So again, communication is important, healthy relationships are important. So brief 10-minute phone contacts. And we use problem-solving theory in this case, which is not used a lot with this age group. Problem-solving theory allows the young people to own the intervention because you're going to work with them to identify the barriers. They know their life better than you do, better than I do. And so we're asking them, what are the barriers in your life right now that impede your ability to practice safer sex? And they'll come up with them. And then we work through, what do you think might work in surmounting some of these barriers? And we make a plan. And much like going back to my doctor, the next 2 months when we do a phone contact, we'll do a checkup and see how that plan worked out. If it didn't work out well, we'll revisit the plan, like Tiffany was doing in the previous slide. We'll revisit it and we'll revise it. So it's very real-time, very adaptive, changes as the person's risk conditions change. Here's the key, the action plan. Everyone needs an action plan. I need an action plan in the morning when I get up. Where the heck am I going to go? What am I going to do? Does anyone ever start the day by not knowing what they're doing? Does anyone not write down their appointments or their phone calls? Exactly. We all do. And that's how we structure our day. But that's the way we structure young people's behavior as well. An action plan that they help develop and we monitor their progress. The analysis is all intent to treat analysis. Overall effects were random effects growth models. And then we looked at cross-sectional differences using regression models. One interesting piece of the study that I added last night, by the way, people always ask me, well, over 3 years, that's 18 phone contacts. Young people aren't going to make those phone contacts. Do you think they're going to keep them? How many people would think, on average age of 18, young people are going to make 18 phone contacts over 3 years? 72% of the phone contacts were completed in the intervention group, and 68% were completed in the control group. Right? So young people will adhere to a mobile phone contact schedule over a 3-year period. Now, I gave you a little bit of the intervention. What about the results? Bye, dear. It's bad when your own wife leaves, right? Come on. What does that say? I think she's heard this before. So basically, adjusted 50% reduction in chlamydia and a 60% reduction in gonorrhea over the 3-year window cumulatively. That's about 8 to 9% at each assessment period. If you look at the behavioral curves, and you'll see the intervention performs better at each point than the comparison condition. And remember, both groups got the same base intervention. They both got a CDC EBI at baseline. But the group that got the mobile contacts still performed significantly better, and that's what we're testing. If we put this into tabular form, significant reductions on condom use in different periods, sex while having drugs, and vaginal partners. Again, we made it really purposely tough on ourselves. We could have compared it to a nothing control, and that would have been a lot easier. But we compared it against a CDC EBI that has intervention effects on STDs. This was subsequently published in American JAMA Pediatrics about 2 years ago or so, 3 years now. And then, well, what does this take us? What's around the bend for personalized health technology? Phone contacts are very personalized. Let me ask you, we have another study we're just submitting now, great results. African American women who drink. We got changes in STDs, condom use, and we reduced alcohol use. A lot of the same strategies, except one difference. In the pilot, we rolled in mHealth, media messaging, text messaging. You know what we discovered? Women hated the mHealth. They much prefer to be contacted by phone and engage in a brief conversation rather than getting a text message. They felt it was really impersonal. So we had to drop the mHealth from the study. And we did.
What was the average age of that?
That group was 18 to 24.
And when was that?
In the last 2 years. Yeah. Yeah. It was surprised all of us. I thought by adding the mHealth, we would be adding another arm to our intervention, making it more intense. But it was just the opposite effect. We went on to check the Google Analytics. I thought something was broken with the computer because we're not showing anyone accessing our mHealth messages. They didn't even want to pick up the messages. Nonetheless, read them.
Do you think it might also have to do with privacy concerns? Because then there's like a record where the phone call and nobody could really tell.
I didn't think about it, but you're absolutely right. And we're going to raise that issue, but you're absolutely correct. Susan.
In both studies, where were they recruited from?
They were recruited from clinics, both clinical studies. So, well, never offline. Who has an Apple Watch? A lot of people say you are never offline. But this is where we can harness the power of technology. Yeah? So, going with that concept, never offline, we can translate large media to small media, the age of miniaturization, nanotechnology. Yeah? This is a study we did with our colleagues at Brown, South Carolina, and Syracuse, a 4-city study where we created media messages and randomized cities. Can you click on that? Yep, that one.
I present to you the honorees of the class of 2008, Felicia Adams, graduating with honors. Cynthia Anderson, graduating at the top of her class. Andrew Minor, graduating with a perfect 4.0. Sean Cooper, graduating with a state football championship. And Donald Reed.
Diplomas, STDs, some things last a lifetime. Life is what you make it. Be safe.
So the study was called Impacts, and that's called the tagline. We actually played that on BET as well as a number of other primetime shows around in the 4 cities. Next one, please. You can skip that. Go to the next one. Okay, try that.
Girl, me and Carlo out last night. And we did it. You serious? Y'all have protection, right? He pulled out. He's experienced. Trust me, he knows what he's doing. I hope you know what you're doing.
Yeah, he's experienced, all right. They're giving you an STD. What's your social security number?
If you are sexually active, use condoms correctly every time. Be safe.
So you notice that the nice thing is these are all 30 seconds or less. Again, someone just gave me this advice. We're making another video now. We're doing another study for the U.S. Navy, where we're doing a randomized trial of about 1,000 naval personnel. And we're creating videos through the Tisch School of Film, Woody Allen, etc. When I went in to make the video, I said, we need something brief. They say something, if you can't catch a person's attention, a millennial's attention in 8 seconds, you don't have them. You have 8 seconds to get their attention. 8. That's about just how long that break was. You have that long to get someone's attention. If it takes longer than that, it's not gonna work. So media is an interesting but a fast field. And millennials have even a shorter attention span. But the nice thing is, you learn more in 30 seconds than if someone stood in front of the room and did a very much of a didactic presentation. And that'll stick with you a lot longer in terms of imagery. Well, there's a lot of potential. Cost-effective, potentially. In fact, the more you use a video-based intervention, the cheaper it becomes. Yeah? Because the cost is fixed. Whenever I make the video, that cost is now fixed. It doesn't cost me anything else. Whether I show it to Theo or I show it to Theo, Claude, and Robert, I just cut the cost by 3. So the fixed cost, now I'm dividing by the number of people I'm exposing it to. There's always the concern with lack of confidentiality. Your question in the back is a good one, well taken. But they can provide effective programmatic and efficient dissemination platforms. This is what might lend it to a hybrid efficacy implementation science intervention, because it does both of these. Right? And here's the promise and the peril. Health technology, you have a lot of information floating around in space. Right? Who has access to this information? Now, I like technology, but to be honest, I'm a technological troglodyte. All right, I can barely get my remote on the TV to work. I have to ask my 7-year-old daughter. So I am not the expert on tech. However, I use it a lot. The key is here, do we want precision prevention? A lot of people have tried M-Health interventions and they didn't work. In fact, a very close friend of John and I, Doug Kirby, did an M-Health intervention. He couldn't even get the people to respond to the intervention, nonetheless pick up the message. And he said, Ralph, how come? I said, because you're giving them a message and they don't know who you are, just like the young man in the back said. Who is sending me this message? So the question is, how do we thread the needle by combining personalized face-to-face intervention, establishing a rapport with somebody, with a real person, and then switching and layering in technology. And in fact, we're doing that in sort of made an automated or artificial intelligence way right now with a computer system. But the key thing to remember is digital information is not about technology. It's about you. It's always about you. It's never about the technology. The technology is a tool that you use, right? The real creativity takes place in our brains. How do we use this technology? How do we harness it? Oh, hang on. I'm actually almost done. And here's a person I really like, Helen Keller, actually. She didn't say anything about the potential of personal health technology, but she did say vision is the art of seeing that which is not visible. She also said, the blindest person I ever met was the person with 20/20 eyesight and no vision. Right? So for all of us, what's the end point? Linking research and action to practice and policy. Linking science to action is our objective. You know? Now, as I was working last night, Gina reminded me of this, so I figured I'd put it in. The door's locked. We can turn off the mic here because I got to swear everyone to silence on this. Yeah. Let's turn this off. All right.